that really the bullseye on the target of leadership, and this is so unrealistic that you may just roll your eyes, but I still think it's worth putting it out there. The bullseye on the target of leadership is this: to only do what only you can do. To only do what only you can do. And to some degree, that is unattainable for most of us. But simply having that out there is a reminder that in leadership, we should constantly be trying to move toward the place to where we only do the things that add the most value to the organization. Every time our organization has restructured for growth, I have to give things up and give things away and do fewer things and do more of what only I can do. Our organization is 26 years old. I carry more responsibility than ever before, but I actually do fewer things. I don't work fewer hours, but I do fewer different things. And this is absolutely essential if you want to grow your department, your division, or your organization. And periodically, my assistant, Diane Grant, who is here today, would say to me, and will say to me, especially in those transition times, okay, if we're going to do that, what are you going to stop doing? If we're going to add that, then what do you want to give up? Because you can't just add and add and add and add, or you begin to hate life. Now, for those of you who are already pushing back, let me address something you may be pushing back on. In certain seasons of your career and in certain seasons in the development of an organization, it is both natural and necessary to do everything. It's natural and necessary. It's natural because early on, especially as the point leader in an organization, you want to set the pace and you want to set the standards. You want to be able to answer the question, this is how we do it here. As you employ people, as you begin to grow, you're orchestrating. And orchestration is, this is how we do it here. And consequently, you have to set the pace and the standard for this is how we do it here. So it's natural for you to jump in and basically kind of pave the way and model how everything in the organization's done. And it's necessary because, as you know, sometimes there's just nobody else to do it. You have to do everything. Natural, you want to set the tone and the pace. Necessary, there's nobody else to do it. If you stay there too long, and again, I think my greatest leadership regret is that in so many areas, I just stayed there too long. And in a few minutes, I'm going to tell you why. Now, that leads me to this. There are what I consider two secrets in leadership, or in my notes I wrote the two best kept secrets of leadership. And again, this begins to focus us in on how to apply the principle of focus. The two best kept secrets, number one, is the less you do, the more you accomplish. Not the fewer hours you work. That's never the case, right? The less or the fewer things you do, the more you actually accomplish. And number two, the less you do, and this is why this is so important for organizational life, the less you do, the more you empower others to accomplish. Now, at the end of our time together, I'm actually going to give you an assignment. And I want to go ahead and give you a heads up on what the assignment is so that you can listen to the rest of this content through that grid, or to watch this through that lens. And so at the end, your assignment's going to be to discover where you add, or to come up with, or to figure out where you add the most value to your current job description, or your current area in the organization where you sit, or to the organization as a whole, to figure out where you add the most value, and then get permission or figure out how to spend more of your time in the area where you add the most value. So at the end, I'm going to say that again. I'm going to give you some specifics. But as you listen to the rest of this, I want you to be thinking, in my current job, or within the context of the entire company, where do I add, or where do I have the potential to add the most value? Now, part of the challenge for some of you is this. The more you begin to focus on a few things, it's going to require you to give up some other things. And for some of us, that's easy. For some of us, we have both feet on the brake when it comes to giving things up. But one of my graduate school professors said this, and I thought this was such a great reminder. The secret of concentration, or you can say the secret of focus, the secret of concentration is elimination. So in order for you to again, focus on your strengths and begin to let go of some weaknesses, you've got to be open-handed and willing to give some things up. Now, again, in terms of motivating you to lean into this content, here are three things that always happen. Here's three things that always happen whenever a leader is distracted from his or her core competencies. These three things happen whether you recognize it or not. These three things are happening right now in some of your organizations. Again, these are things that happen behind the scenes that ultimately undermine your personal efficiency and ultimately the efficiency of the organization. When leaders get distracted from their core competencies, number one, their perceived value to the organization is diminished, not their actual value. The problem is nobody even knows their actual value. In your organization, there are people who work around you, and perhaps the people who, direct you, your boss, your manager, supervisor, they may not even know your actual value to the organization because you're not working out of your strengths. Nobody will recognize your actual value until you are focused on where you add the most value. Nobody's going to even understand or appreciate your actual value to the organization until you are doing the things where you add the most value. The second thing that happens, and again, this happens whether we recognize it or not, when a leader gets distracted from core competencies, the perceived value of other leaders in the organization is diminished. Why? Because if I'm not in my lane and if I'm not leading from my sweet spot, I'm liable to get in your way because I'm liable to be doing things that really you ought to do, but you can't do because I'm the boss and I've just decided this is what I'm going to do. So consequently, you could do some things that I'm doing better than I can do them, but nobody's ever going to know that because I'm not applying this principle and I'm in the way. I wrote in my notes, when I stay in my lane, it clears the path for other leaders to excel in theirs. So again, this isn't just about you as the point leader. This is really about everybody in the organization. The third thing that happens, and some of you have experienced this in previous jobs or previous the ability of the organization to keep great leaders is ultimately diminished. Now here's something I've learned over the years. Very few people in an organization feel like they have to be number one. Nobody feels, very few people are like, I can't stay here if I can't be number one. But great leaders won't stick around if they're not able to exploit their strengths for the benefit of the organization. People want space to do what they do best. And if you get in their way, they will eventually be on their way. Because everybody wants to thrive in the workplace. Everybody wants to thrive in the marketplace. And people thrive when they're able to find a seat on the bus, a job description that allows them to do the things that they do best. It gives them energy, and ultimately it puts wind in the sails of the entire organization. So the point being, this is a really big deal. It's a really big deal for you personally, but it's a really big deal for your division and your department. And if you can learn to model this, or I should say, if you'll discipline yourself to model this, then this helps capacity throughout the entire organization. It impacts everything. I wrote it impacts culture, productivity, longevity, because people are going to stay longer if they're allowed to do what they do best, and certainly enjoyability. Now, having said all that, I doubt any of that is certainly not new. It's certainly not, oh my gosh, I never thought of that before. I've never experienced that before. So the question is, and the tension is, and where I want to spend the rest of our time is, why do we miss this? Or let me personalize it. Why do I miss it? Why, as many times as I've talked about this, why as much as I believe in this, why, if I'm not careful, will I drift away from what is obvious, what is best for me as a leader, and what's best for the organization? And I think there are 5 primary reasons. And here's what I want to do in the next few minutes. I'm going to list these 5. And probably only one of them actually applies to you. Maybe 2, but probably only one of these applies to you. In other words, one of these is going to be your primary obstacle in terms of really taking hold of and applying this principle. And when I get to yours, essentially now you know what your homework assignment is. Now you know the obstacle that you can begin to remove to free you up to do what you do best within the organization, and then begin to work your way into a place within your current job description or your current organization where you're spending more time doing what you do best and adding more value to the organization. So I'll do these really quick. The first reason I think that we miss this, even though it's obvious, is number 1, we've already talked about this a little bit, we buy into the well-rounded myth, like I talked about early on, that somehow I've got to shore up my weaknesses instead of focusing on my strengths. When we focus on shoring up our weaknesses rather than developing our strengths, again, we end up winging it in the areas where we're strong, and we're never, ever going to add the value that we could otherwise. So here's the big takeaway on this one. The goal, and especially if you're an entrepreneur or you're, again, the head of a big division or department, or you have lots of direct reports, or there's an entire organization that sits under your leadership, the goal is to build a well-rounded organization, department or division. The goal is to develop a well-rounded organization, not to become a well-rounded leader. And those are two very different things. But if you get this right, and I'll give you an example in just a minute. If you get this right, your organization, your department or division, it will reflect your strengths, but it will not reflect your weaknesses. Because again, the goal isn't to be a well-rounded leader, it's to develop a well-rounded organization. So the tip for this one is to play to your strengths and delegate your weaknesses. To play to your strengths and figure out a way to delegate your weaknesses. The second reason, so for some of you that might be your thing, you may be caught up in the, oh, I thought I was supposed to shore up my weaknesses so I can be a well-rounded leader. That's the obstacle, that's your homework to figure out how to work around. Number two, second reason we miss this is we don't distinguish between our authority and our core competencies. This is so huge and this is so subtle and this happens all the time. We don't distinguish between our authority and our core competencies. Every leader, no matter how big the division or the department or the organization is, every leader has authority over areas in which they have little or possibly no expertise or competency. And the larger the organization and the more responsibility you have, the more authority you have, but the dumber you get. In other words, the more responsibility you have, your IQ in terms of overall IQ for the organization, it shrinks. I mean, for those of you who work here with me, and for those of you who work in a large organization, you know this. There are so many facets to what goes on within a large organization to make it successful. And you have to hire people with areas of super specific expertise. So I have authority over people who do things that I don't have any idea what they do or how they do it or even how to make it better. If a leader gets confused and feels like because I have authority over it, I need to speak into it, that's a problem. They're out of their lane, they're out of their area of expertise, but because they're the boss, because they're the authority, to tell you how to do your job, and you would go home every afternoon going, you know what, I just wish they would let me do my job, because then you would excel, the organization would be better, and they would ultimately be more successful. So confusing authority with competency, it's a big deal. Personal example, I am a really good, in terms of my skill set, not compared to other people, but in terms of my skill set, one of my primary value adds to our organization is I'm a good content developer. I can just crank out outlines. You give me a topic, give me information. I can just sit down. That's something in my skill set. I don't know that I'm better than everybody else or anybody else, but in terms of my skill set, I'm good at that. I am not good, and I ask that none of the folks who work directly with me laugh out loud. I am not good at organizing events or project management. Thank you. I am not good at organizing events or project management. And in the past, this has happened so many times. We'll be in a meeting and we're talking about a project, and I'm trying to be magnanimous and generous and, be a team player. I'm like, I'll take care of that. And I can see the people around the table like, no. I mean, you have the authority. And if I say, you know what, no, I'm doing this, but what can they say? I'm the boss. But they know when I get out of my lane, whatever the project is, whatever the event that we're about to produce would be, goodness, it's never going to be as good as it could be. Now, I have authority, but I have almost no expertise or competence. And when we get these two things confused, we get out of our lane quickly. And again, you can see we hamper what other people are doing. So the tip for this one is leverage and we've talked about this before at LeaderCast, but this is huge. Leverage your authority as little as possible. Leverage your authority as little as possible. Make as few decisions as possible. And the reason is, as your organization or department grows, again, your IQ is going to you're going to get dumber and dumber. So you just need to make fewer decisions and make decisions within the realm of your area of expertise, and then trust other people to make decisions in there. So to help you with this, because some of us, this is such a big deal, I want you to repeat after me out loud. Everybody just say this. You decide. You decide. One more time. You decide. You decide. There are people who work with you and for you who would almost faint to hear you say that. They are dying for you to listen to what they're trying to do or what they're trying to, the problem they're trying to solve. And they would love for you to just look at them and say, you decide, because what you're saying is this. That's your area of expertise. You know more about that than I do. I trust your judgment better than my judgment. I have the authority. You have the competence. You have the good judgment in that area. So make as few decisions as possible. Somebody in your organization is probably dying to hear you say that. Number 3, the reason we miss this is, and it's related to number 2, but I wanted to make this distinction. We're not aware of what we're not good at. This is a self-awareness issue. And the 2 reasons in organizational life this becomes a problem is, number 1, it's something that we've always done. If there's a role that you have always played in the organization, you may be the best person you've ever seen do that particular thing, but that doesn't mean you're good at it. But because you've always been in that seat and nobody's competing for that seat, you just sit there because it's something you've always done. The second problem is sometimes it's something we just enjoy. And perhaps you've worked with people who enjoy what they do. They're just not good at it. I wrote in my notes, and this is kind of an industry-specific thing for my industry as a church leader. Have you ever endured someone who enjoyed singing but couldn't? Yeah, have you ever endured it? Right, endured. They're enjoying it. I mean, they are just loving it. And no one else is loving it because they can't do what they're sure. So the takeaway is, don't be that leader. Just decide, you know what, if I'm not good at it, even if I love it, I enjoy it, it's my favorite part of my job, but you know what? There are other people that can do it better. Just give it up and figure out how to lean into your strength. We all need people around us. We all need people around us who are empowered to say to us privately, you shouldn't sing. You should sing at home. You should sing in the shower. You should sing in the car, but you should not sing in public. And it could be that you are doing things, and because you're the boss, you have the authority, nobody's going to tell you that unless you invite that feedback. Somebody needs to be able to take things away from us. So the tip for this one is, it's okay. It is okay not to be good at something. It is not okay to keep doing something you're not good at. It's okay not to be great at certain things, right? Even if they were diminishes your effectiveness. Admitting a weakness to your staff, again, even if you have the authority, it never diminishes your effectiveness, and it never diminishes people's respect for you. It always increases respect and increases effectiveness. When we acknowledge a weakness, it's never new information for the people who work with us. When you acknowledge, you know what, I need to quit doing this because I don't think I'm great at it, no one is going to reach for their pen and write that down as if that's new information. They already know. They're just going to be thrilled that you finally figured it out. So be willing to give it up. They won't be surprised. They'll just be relieved. The fourth reason we miss this whole idea of focusing on our strengths rather than just trying to shore up a weakness. And I mentioned this one, I almost left it out. I mentioned this one because this is one that I struggled with and at times still struggle with. So maybe it's somebody out there as well. And it's a little bit long and clunky. One reason we miss this is we feel guilty delegating things we don't enjoy. It's the opposite of the other one. And aren't good at because we assume nobody else will enjoy them either. So you have such great character. You are so selfless. It's like, I hate this part of my job. And because I hate this part of my job, I bet everybody would hate to have this as part of their job. So as the leader, I'm just going to keep doing this because I don't want to put this on anybody else. That's almost always a mistake. So consequently, in the early years, Diane and others would sort of have to pry my fingers off of things because I thought I was doing them a favor by not asking them to do them. And they're like, no, first of all, you're no good at it. Number two, just because you hate it doesn't mean other people are going to hate it. You got to let that stuff go. And if you don't, what am I going to do? I'm going to spend too much time on things I don't enjoy, which depletes energy, right? And I'm going to do things I'm not good at, which is going to impact the entire organization. It took me a long time to realize there are people who actually love to do the things that I don't enjoy doing. So here's your tip on this one. Your weakness, this is so important, your weakness is somebody else's opportunity. Your weakness, you're not good at it and you don't enjoy it, that is somebody else's opportunity. And delegating, there's a good and a not so great way to delegate things, but delegating things again, it empowers you because you're able to focus, and it empowers them because they're able to focus on something they're gifted at and they actually look forward to doing. So your weakness is somebody else's opportunity. The last reason that we miss this. And this is a tough one for some of us because of the way we're wired, because of our temperament, is we don't take time to develop other leaders. If you don't take time to develop other leaders, you do have to do everything. If you don't take time to develop other leaders, you're never going to be satisfied with how other people do the things that you're doing that you may not be great at, but nobody else can do it as well as you. There is some truth to the adage that if you want something done right, do it yourself. But here's the tip, this is so important for those of us in leadership. Leadership is not primarily about getting things done right. Leadership is about getting things done right through other people, which means you have to develop other leaders, which means you have to allow some balls to drop every once in a while. You have to allow things to be done in such a way that don't naturally or actually reflect exactly how you would do it. But that's the only way to develop leaders around you, and the only way to multiply influence. And ultimately, as you know, it's the only way to grow your organization. So, and when I say getting things done through other people, I'm not talking about using other people. I'm talking about empowering other people by positioning them where they can succeed and thrive, because you set them up to do more of what they can only, you set them up to do what only they can do, in the sense that they're able to focus on their strengths, their passions. And again, they win, you win, the organization wins. But in order to develop leaders and in order to figure out what people are actually good at, you've got to experiment. There have to be some losses. There have to be some setbacks. You've got to be willing to have some minor failures along the way. And for certain personalities, this is so very difficult, but they become a lid to their own leadership. So as you think about those 5 things, maybe one of them or 2 of them or something about one of those 5 things may have kind of dinged your conscience, or you're like, oh my goodness, that is totally me. Well, now you know where to bring some pressure to bear in terms of getting yourself to the place where you're able to change your thinking and begin to open up the capacity yourself in terms of leadership, and it's ultimately the people around you. Now, as I said, I feel like when people ask me, Andy, what's your biggest leadership failure? They're looking for some tangible thing where we lost a lot of money, or something broke, or we hired the wrong people. This is what I always go to when people say, what's your biggest leadership failure? I always say, I spent too much time doing things I had no business doing. Even in my case, I feel like I had good motives, but I finally figured this out. So in terms of teasing you to really lean into this, I want to tell you the 2 biggest benefits of getting this right. And I talked about those 3 things that happen on the negative side. Here are the 2 positive takeaways when you begin to get this right. There's a personal win, and there's an organization or corporate win. And the personal win is this, that you're going to find it much easier to establish and maintain a sustainable pace personally. You're going to find it much easier to establish and maintain a sustainable pace personally. Stress in the workplace, and you know this, you've experienced this, maybe you put it in different words, but stress in the workplace is often related to what we're doing, not how much we're doing. And when you're spending 30, 40, 50%, 60% of your work time in an area where you don't thrive and you don't feel like you're competent, it is so stressful, and you constantly feel like a failure. But all of us have had those days, or maybe those weeks, or those projects where you are just, you just can't get enough of it. Other people are like, whoa, you're happier, you seem more energized. When you're finally able to sit down or focus on or get the team together to do that thing, you go home energized, you have more energy, you're in a better mood, the people around you enjoy working with you more. So ultimately, the personal win in this is you're going to be more effective as a leader just because of what's happening on the inside of you. And there's less stress. We experience less stress when we're doing the thing that we're gifted or called to do. The corporate win is this, that you will build an organization or department, I mentioned this earlier, that you're going to build an organization or department that reflects your strengths but not your weaknesses, which is the goal. When you're in your zone and you're delegating other things, and you finally figured out, why is it that I continue to drift outside my lane? When you finally get that figured out, again, less stress for you, and you're going to have an organization or department or division that will it's going to definitely reflect your strengths, because you're bringing more of your strengths to bear, but it will not reflect your weaknesses. Our organization and our local communities is famous for something I'm not good at. Our organization is famous in our local communities for events. And the best thing I can do to ensure that we have great events is not plan the event. In fact, the best thing I can do, and this is what I do, and the people I work with, many of them are sitting here. This is not making this up. When it comes to an event, I submit myself to the authority of the person producing and running the event. My question isn't how can I be in charge and what decisions do I need to make? My question is what do you need me to do? Because I have a little itty bitty skill set. I can develop content and present content. If you need a content developer and a presenter, I'm your guy. Now put me in where you think I fit, and if I don't fit, don't put me in. So our organization is most famous and known for in our communities. We're most known for something I personally am not good at. And the reason we're known for it is because I learned the hard way to stay out of it. I have authority, I don't have competence, so I try to stay in my lane. Now, here, going back to your homework assignment, I want to make this super specific and I'll wrap up. For those of you, because I know some of you're listening, you're like the point leader, you're like, oh yeah, I need to get this right. Some of you are somewhere in the middle. In fact, most everybody listening or participating is somewhere in the middle. You're like, well, that would be great if I was like the point leader of our division or our company, but I'm not. I'm somewhere in the middle. So here's what I want all the middle people to do, because we're all to some extent middle people. Everybody reports to somebody. I certainly do. I report to a board. Here's what I'd love to ask you to do at some point, maybe before this day is over. Within the context of your current job, or within the context of the broader context of your company. So you can do this one of two ways. Within the context of your current job, or you may look at your current job and say, you know what, I'm not even in the right job. Or within the context of your current company. I want to encourage you to develop, like write down and script out your ideal job description. Your ideal job description. In other words, if I within this job or I within this company could do what I think I'm best at, where I would add the greatest value, most value, write it down, just script it out. I mean, just be as specific, be as bold, just get it all down there, make it, the good grammar, spell all the words right. And here's how I would encourage you to begin this little short document like this. I could add more value, or I believe I could add more value, or I'm convinced I could add more value to our company if I could devote more of my time to. I believe I could add more value to our company or our organization if I could devote more of my time to. And then look for the right time to present it to your supervisor or your boss. Again, as I said earlier, a good manager, a good boss wants this information because they don't necessarily know what you're great at. And the thing is, you may be doing, and this is what makes this difficult, you may be doing a great job, but you may not be doing what you do great. And your supervisor, a good supervisor wants to know and have that information. That is what I call appropriate ambition. So I want to encourage you to figure that out, begin with a statement, something like this, and then just wait. It may be a month, a week, a year. If you're a supervisor or you're a company owner, this may not be a bad assignment to give to some of your employees. Hey, everybody's doing a great job, but I want to know what I don't know about where you could add value to our organization. That would be a win for everybody. So wrapping up, there are many things you can do. Focus on the things you do best and where you add the most value to the organization. Your fully exploited strengths are of far greater value to your organization than your marginally improved weaknesses. The less you do, the more you will accomplish. Last thing, and this is important. Don't try this at home. Don't try this at home. You are all things. You cannot delegate affection. You cannot delegate acceptance. You can't delegate those difficult conversations. At home, you are all things to all people. Guys, you got that. You just have that little glass of orange juice and you open up the dishwasher to put it in there and the dishwasher is full of clean dishes. And you're looking around and you're thinking to yourself, you know what? I'm not really good at cleaning out the dishwasher. This isn't my thing. You know what? You just clean it out anyway, right? And ladies, I'll just stay in my own lane. Thanks so much for having me at LeaderCast. I love this organization. You're in for a great rest of your day. Again, I hope I see you next year. Thank you.
speaking on Zoom. Following is a leader who generates possibility at an outsized rate. And when I mean they generate possibility,